speak.
We also had a public hearing.
And we also had a public hearing. After much deliberation, I think, there's no need for me to read it. You can read it for yourselves. The fence ordinance that, the draft that we're presenting before you for your review and for you to review it, do what you want. I would like to thank the commissioners. They spent a lot of time. There was a lot of effort. There was a lot of testimony heard. We had somebody from the DNR come to talk to us about the deer, fencing issues with the deer, the woodlands with the deer. There was much testimony and comments in regards to that. Obviously, to me, the big portion of it is the deer fence. And what we were asked to do was to review it. There was a lot of input on both sides. Those people and residents who were for deer fencing and those who were opposed to it. I think the commission did their best to come up with what the commission felt was a fair compromise to what all residents could live with. This certainly is not something that everybody is going to be happy with, because there are those people who want fences and there are those people who don't. So in no way, believe me, am I standing here feeling that everybody is going to be satisfied with this at the end of the day, because somebody's bound to be unhappy. You hate to be in those situations, but that is what it is, and we did our best to come up with a compromise. I think one of the things that drove the commission from moving the 8-foot perimeter fence that is known as deer fences from an entire perimeter fence to within the building envelope was a compromise based on a lot of testimony, especially from the DNR that he wanted to see movement for the deer between homes, between passages, so they could have their routes and move freely throughout the village. At the same time, we understand that there are villagers who have spent a lot of money and have made an investment in their yards in protecting the woodland. And we also feel that, there's a great sensitivity in this village to protecting the woodlands. It's what makes our community unique. And with this in mind, besides the ordinance, the commissioners would like the board to strongly take into consideration improving, which was discussed at the last meeting, improving the financial aid with the buckthorn, with the garlic mustard, maybe expand that program to include lessening the canopy. There was a great presentation by the RPC. They did a lot of work. I commend them on the amount of work that they did. They certainly knew their stuff, and they have come up with a lot of strong and good suggestions on preserving the woods. I think that something that's going to come before this board that was of major discussion for a couple of meetings was the deer itself. Obviously, the fences were put up as a deterrent measure against the deer. I think that basically the discussion was culling the deer. It's an emotional discussion for this village. If we thought that the deer fences were emotional, that certainly will become an emotional discussion, but we feel that everything has to be looked at this, especially if we're going to move some fences back, and then something else, needs to be done. And we are strongly suggesting that the board look at that. So I have one other thing I'd just like to discuss, and that is a letter written about from the Deer and Woodland Protection Fences from the Riverwoods Environmental Committee. Quite honestly, it's my feeling that there are too many misrepresentations in that letter of the Plan Commission's meetings to go into. But the main force of this letter and the focus of the letter is, although there was much discussion of fences, detailed discussion of the effect of deer on woodlands was considered outside of the Plan Commissioner's charter. It It is totally incorrect. We spent days about the deer. And what was said at that meeting was that culling the deer was outside of the charter of the Plan Commission. And I think that's an important issue that I'd like to bring up. I'm not going to go into the rest of it. I'll leave that up to you. But all the commissioners have voiced their strong feeling about that. Thank you. Any questions?
Please report.
Well, since the November 3rd meeting, we had the following activity. We responded to 2 911 hang-ups, 10 accidents, 10 burglar alarms, 1 assault, 3 animal complaints. We've assisted the fire department 15 times. We've assisted other agencies 5 times. We've installed a child safety seat, responded to a dispute, two domestic disturbance, and 2 driving complaints. We've fingerprinted 1 individual for licensing purposes, public assist. Taken 1 found property, responded to 1 juvenile problem, 3 lockouts. We responded to a major crash assistance. One of our officers is a member of the Lake County Major Crash Assistance Team. We responded to a fatal accident outside of River Woods. Had 7 motorist assists, 3 open burnings, 4 parking complaints, 4 suspicious circumstances, 1 theft, 1 threatening phone call, taken 8 case reports, given out 1 crime prevention notice, and we've made 78 traffic stops and issued 40 persons 47 citations. Additionally, we are currently watching 9 houses for people who are out of town. Also, I put copies of the proposed 2010 police department budget. Basically, it hasn't really changed since last year very much. I've really tried to keep everything pretty flat. The major difference, obviously, is we're purchasing 4 cars this year, where we purchased 1 car last year. So that accounts for most of the increase. Of course, next year, we don't anticipate purchasing any vehicles. And even the year after that, possibly only 1 vehicle, because we expect to get more life out of the vehicles that you approved last meeting. Once the cars are subtracted out, it's really only an $18,900 increase, or 1.5% of the total budget. Of course, salaries have gone up more than $18,900 based on the 3.25% increase that's already built into the union contract for the police officers. Fuel is very hard to predict, and I basically took what I anticipate us spending by the end of this year, and then I use estimates from the Energy Information Administration and what they increases will be, and that's pretty much how I came with fuel, up to the fuel amount. I can't promise you that it won't be much more than that, and hopefully it'll be much less than that. Obviously, I just have no certain way of predicting other than just going by their estimates. Additionally, what I put in the budget, in 2011, I plan on replacing the squad car computers, and those are approximately $5,000 each, but I've applied for grants, which I'm waiting to hear from 2 of them, and those are matching grants, and hopefully I'll hear soon. And there's a 3rd one that I expect to become available in 2010, and I'll apply for that one also if the first 2 weren't successful. If I do get one of those grants, it's a matching grant, I would come back to the board in 2010 and ask